The sun was shining softly on that early morning. The air was calm and cool, and the streets were quiet as the city slowly woke up. People were beginning their daily routines. Some were walking to work, some were stopping at little shops for coffee, and some were just enjoying the peaceful morning. But at the edge of the city, near an old government building, a small event was about to happen, something simple but full of meaning. John, an old man in his late 70s, was walking carefully down the sidewalk. He wore a plain jacket and a cap to protect himself from the mild breeze. His face was weathered with time. His eyes were tired, but held a quiet strength.
John was a veteran.
He had served in the army many years ago, long before most of the people around him were born. Now he lived a simple life in a small apartment not far from the city center. John's steps were slow, and he used a walking cane to help him balance. His hands, though shaking a little, held the cane firmly. As he walked, he thought about the reason he was going to the building today. It was an appointment at the veterans' office. John needed to discuss some papers about his pension, something that had become important as he got older and faced more health problems. He knew this was routine for many veterans, but for him, it was a little more special. The building stood, tall and strong, was made of old bricks, with large windows that reflected the morning light. There were guards standing at the entrance, watching carefully as people came and went. John approached slowly, feeling a mix of nervousness and hope. He was not used to asking for help or attention. He had always been proud and independent. But age and life had taught him that sometimes it was okay to ask. At the gate, a young guard named Michael stood watch. Michael was in his early 20s, fresh out of training and working his first job as a security guard. He wore a clean uniform and had a serious face. He was polite but distant with visitors, doing his job carefully. When John came close, Michael looked at him quickly. He saw an old man with a cane, but nothing unusual at first. "Good morning, sir," Michael said in a steady voice. "You have an appointment?" "Yes," John replied softly. "I am here for the veterans' office. I have papers to submit." Michael nodded and checked the list on his clipboard. "Please show your ID, sir." John slowly opened his wallet and handed over his old, worn-out ID card. Michael took it and looked carefully. The photo showed a younger John, but Michael could tell this man had been through a lot. There was a quiet dignity about him, even if he looked fragile. "Thank you, sir." "You can go in," Michael said, stepping aside to open the gate. John smiled gently and stepped inside. As he walked through the door, he noticed the walls were covered with pictures of veterans from many years and many wars. Some looked happy, some serious, some even young and hopeful. John's heart warmed a little. He felt a connection to these faces, even if they were just pictures. He found a bench near the waiting area and sat down carefully. The room was filled with other veterans and their families. Some were talking quietly, some reading newspapers, and some just waiting. John looked around and thought about his own life, the battles he had fought, the friends he had lost, and the long journey to get here. Across the room, the guard kept watch. He saw John sitting quietly, watching the pictures on the wall. There was something different about this man. Michael was used to seeing many people, but John seemed to carry a story. Michael wondered what it was like to be a veteran, to have given so much for the country. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the back of the room. A young woman was helping an elderly man who had stood up too quickly. The atmosphere was full of small moments like this: kindness, respect, and patience. John watched all this with calm eyes, feeling both sadness and hope. After some time, a nurse called John's name. He stood slowly and walked to the office, his cane tapping softly on the floor. Inside, the staff greeted him warmly. They helped him fill out the forms and answered his questions patiently. John felt grateful for their kindness. As John left the office, he felt a little lighter. He had done what he came to do, and though it was a small step, it mattered. Outside, Michael was still at his post. When John passed by, Michael looked at him with new respect. There was a silent understanding between them, even without words. John smiled again, tipped his cap slightly, and continued on his way. The day was still young, and for a moment, in the middle of a busy city, something simple and powerful had happened. The meeting of a veteran and a guard, each carrying their own stories, one of service, the other of duty, had created a quiet connection that would stay with them both. After John left the veteran's office, he walked slowly down the quiet hallway toward the exit. His thoughts drifted back to the days when he was young, strong, and full of energy. Those were different times. The world seemed full of challenges, but also full of hope. John remembered the moment he first put on his uniform and raised his hand to promise to protect his country. It was a proud moment. He had been just a boy then, but he understood the meaning of duty as John moved forward. His mind went to the many places he had been during his service. He had traveled far from home, through forests, mountains, and deserts. He had met brave friends and faced dangers that most people could never imagine. Sometimes those memories were painful. Sometimes they were filled with laughter and friendship. Each story was a part of who he was. At the entrance, the guard Michael watched John carefully. He saw how the old man moved with care and respect for himself and others. Michael's curiosity grew. He had never spoken much with veterans. Before, only greeted them as part of his job. But now he felt an urge to know more. When John approached again, Michael decided to speak. "Sir," he said, stepping closer with a friendly tone, "if you don't mind me asking, what was your time like when you served? I don't know much, but I want to understand." John looked at Michael and smiled softly. He saw the young man's honest eyes and felt a connection. "I don't mind at all," John said slowly. "It was a long time ago, but I can share a little." They found a quiet corner by the window where the light was soft. John took a deep breath and began. "I joined the army when I was just 18, he started. "I was young and full of dreams. I wanted to do something important to serve my country and make a difference. My family was proud, but also worried. War is not easy, and many never come back." Michael listened closely, his eyes wide with respect. John continued, "I was sent to a distant place where the fighting was tough. The days were hot and dusty. We slept on the ground, sometimes with no food for hours. But we had each other, and my friends were like brothers. We shared everything, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams for the future." He paused for a moment, then said quietly, "There were hard times too. I lost some friends. I remember the sound of silence after the battle and the weight of grief that stayed with me. It was not easy to carry." Michael nodded. He had heard stories about war before. But hearing it from John felt different, more real, or personal. John smiled faintly and said, "But I also learned about courage. Not just the courage to fight, but the courage to keep going, to believe in something bigger than yourself. That helped me through the darkest days." Michael looked down for a moment, thinking about his own life. He had never faced danger like that. His job as a guard was important, but nothing compared to what John had done. "I can't imagine what you went through," Michael said honestly. "Thank you for sharing. I think people don't always realize how much veterans have given." Nodded. "That's true. Many people don't understand. Sometimes we feel invisible, like our stories don't matter anymore. But every veteran has a story. Every story deserves to be heard." The two men sat quietly for a moment, the sounds of the building around them soft and distant. Then John looked at Michael and said, "You know, Michael, your job here is important too. You keep people safe, and that is something to be proud of." Michael smiled. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot coming from you." Their conversation was simple but deep. Two men from different generations, connected by respect and understanding. Later, as John prepared to leave, Michael offered to help him with his cane. "Let me help you to the gate," he said kindly. John accepted with a grateful nod. As they walked together, Michael shared stories about his own life, how he joined the security job to support his family and his dreams for the future. John listened with interest, feeling hope for the young man's path. At the gate, they said their goodbyes. But before John left, Michael turned and said, "Sir, would you like to come back sometime and talk more? I want to learn and maybe share your stories with others." John smiled warmly. "I would like that very much." As John walked away, Michael watched him go with new respect. The veteran's story had touched something inside him, a reminder that behind every uniform, every job, every face, there was a human being with dreams, struggles, and courage. This small moment, this sharing between two strangers, had changed something. It reminded Michael why he worked here, and it gave John a feeling of being seen and valued. Around them, life continued. People came and went, but for those two men, a bridge had been built, a bridge of understanding, respect, and hope for a better future. After that day, Michael found himself thinking about John and the stories he had shared. The young guard had never expected to feel such a strong connection with someone so different from him. John was old and had lived through times Michael could only imagine. But their conversation stayed with Michael like a quiet song he couldn't forget. At work, Michael began to notice the veterans who came through the building more carefully. He saw their tired eyes, their slow steps, and sometimes the pride they carried beneath their quietness. Each veteran seemed to hold a secret story, a chapter of history lived in silence. Michael wanted to know those stories, to understand what had shaped these men and women. One afternoon, while Michael was at his post, John returned, walked slowly again, his cane tapping softly on the floor. This time he carried a small bag and looked a little more confident. When Michael saw him, a smile spread across his face. "Welcome back, sir," Michael said warmly. "I'm glad you came," John nodded, his eyes twinkling. "Thank you, Michael. Thought I would come by and tell you more. There is much to share." They found the same quiet corner by the window. John settled into his chair, took a deep breath, and began. "In the Army, we had a saying," John said softly. "No man left behind." It meant that we cared for each other no matter what. If a friend was hurt or lost, we did everything we could to bring them home. Michael listened closely, feeling the weight of those words. John continued, "I remember one night in the field, under a sky full of stars. We were tired, hungry, and scared. Suddenly, one of our soldiers was hurt badly. The others risked their lives to carry him back to safety. That night showed me the true meaning of brotherhood." Michael's eyes filled with respect. "That must have been very hard." "It was," John said, "but it also gave me hope. Even in the darkest times, we had each other. That is something I have never forgotten." John's voice became quieter. But the hardest part came after the war. When we returned home, life was different. Many people did not understand what we had been through. Some were proud, but others ignored us. It was lonely. Michael nodded slowly. "I can't imagine." "How that felt," John smiled sadly. "It was a new battle, one inside our hearts. Some of my friends struggled with memories that would not go away. Some found it hard to live with what they had seen. It was a silent pain." Michael thought about his own family. He remembered stories his grandfather told him about the war. But he never really understood the struggles veterans faced after. John looked at Michael and said, "That is why today it is important to listen and care. Veterans need respect and kindness, not just words, but actions." Michael felt a new responsibility in his heart. He wanted to do more than just guard a door. He wanted to be someone who could make a difference, even in small ways. Over the next few weeks, Michael began to learn more about veterans and their needs. He talked to his supervisors about ways to help. He suggested small things, friendly greetings, listening with patience, and sharing stories to help others understand. One day, Michael invited John to a small gathering for veterans that the community center was organizing. John agreed happily. It was the first time in many years that John felt truly welcomed and appreciated in a public space. At the event, veterans shared their stories, sang old songs, and remembered those who had been lost. Families and neighbors came to listen and thank them. John felt a warmth in his heart he had not known for a long time. Michael watched as the veterans smiled and laughed, felt proud to be part of something that honored their courage and sacrifice. After the event, John and Michael walked together outside under the evening sky. John said, "Thank you, Michael. You have given me and many others hope." Michael smiled. "No, sir. You have taught me. You've showed me what it means to serve with courage." Their friendship grew stronger with each meeting. They found in each other a bond that crossed generations. One afternoon, while Michael was at the gate, An important visitor arrived, a high-ranking official from the Veterans Department. Michael greeted him and told him about the work they were doing to honor veterans. The official was impressed and invited Michael and John to speak at a city meeting about supporting veterans. They accepted with gratitude at the meeting. John stood before the crowd and spoke about his life, the battles he fought, and the challenges after returning home. His voice was strong and clear. Michael stood beside him, sharing the story of how one veteran had changed his life. The audience listened with respect, and applause filled the room. Afterwards, many people approached John and Michael to say thank you. Some offered help, some shared their own stories, and others promised to support veterans more. John felt proud. For the first time in a long while, he knew his story was making a difference. Michael realized that his simple job had grown into something much bigger. He was no longer just a guard. He was a bridge between the past and the future, between veterans and the community. Together, John and Michael continued their work, inspiring others to see veterans not as forgotten people, but as heroes with stories that matter. The news about John and Michael's story began to spread through the city. People were touched by the honest words of the veteran and the young guard, who had taken time to listen and understand. It was a small story, but one that reminded many about the true meaning of respect and kindness. After the city meeting, a group of community members decided to do something special for the veterans. They organized a gathering at the local park, inviting all veterans and their families. The goal was simple: to show gratitude and to give veterans a place where they could feel valued and loved. John was invited as a guest of honor. He felt nervous, but happy. It had been many years since he had stood in front of such a crowd, and he wondered if people would really listen. Michael promised to be there, standing by his side. On the day of the gathering, the park was filled with colorful tents, chairs, and smiling faces. Children played nearby while adults chatted and shared stories. The air was warm, and the sound of music drifted gently through the trees. John arrived slowly, his cane tapping softly on the ground. When people saw him, they stood and clapped. It was a moment he would never forget. The applause was not just for him, but for all veterans who had served and sacrificed. Michael greeted John with a warm smile. "You belong here, sir. Today's about you and all the others who gave so much." John nodded, feeling a deep gratitude. He looked around and saw families, friends, and even strangers coming together. It was a gathering of respect and love. The event began with a speech from the community leader, who thanked the veterans for their service and asked everyone to take a moment to appreciate their courage. Then, John was invited to speak. He stood slowly and looked at the crowd. His voice was calm but strong. "I am honored to be here today," John said. "I want to thank all of you for remembering us. Many veterans carry memories that are hard to share, but your kindness makes those memories lighter." He paused and looked at Michael. "And I want to thank this young man who reminded me that no one is forgotten, that every story matters." The crowd cheered, and some people wiped tears from their eyes. After the speeches, the gathering turned into a celebration. There was food, music, and laughter. Veterans shared their stories with new friends. Families enjoyed the day together. John found himself surrounded by people who wanted to listen. Children asked him questions about his time in the Army, and he answered with patience and warmth. Michael helped organize games and activities for the children, making sure everyone had fun. He noticed how the day brought smiles to faces that had known hard times. As the sun began to set, John and Michael sat on a bench, watching the last light fade. John said softly, "Today was more than I ever hoped for. It feels like a new beginning." Michael smiled. "It is. We started something that can grow. A community that cares." John looked at Michael with pride. "You have done well, my friend. You have made a difference." Michael felt a deep happiness. He knew that this was just the start of a journey to bring respect and love to all veterans. In the days that followed, more events were planned. Schools invited veterans to speak, and local businesses offered discounts and support. The city began to change little by little as people learned to honor those who served. John's health improved slightly with all the attention and care. He felt stronger, not just in body but in spirit. The loneliness that had once weighed Heavily was lifting. Michael continued his work at the building but also spent time volunteering at veteran centers. He became a voice for those who often went unheard. Their friendship remained strong, built on trust and shared purpose. They reminded each other that respect is not just a word, but an action. One evening, as they sat together, John said, "I never thought a guard like you could change so much. You gave me hope when I needed it most."
Michael replied,
"And you gave me a lesson in courage and kindness. Together we can help others see what really matters." The city watched as two men from different worlds worked side by side to build a better future for all veterans. Their story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that respect and understanding can change lives and communities. As time went by, the story of John and Michael became well known in their city. People talked about the old veteran and the young guard who showed kindness and respect to each other. Their simple friendship had grown into something much bigger, a movement of care and appreciation for all veterans. John felt proud of how things had changed. For many years he had felt forgotten, like the sacrifices he made did not matter. But now people smiled when they saw him. They thanked him and his fellow veterans. He was invited to speak at schools, community events, and even local radio shows. His voice helped others understand what it truly meant to serve. Michael also felt proud, but in a quiet way. He remembered the first time he saw John, just another old man at the gate. He saw a hero, a teacher, and a friend. Michael had learned that respect was not just about rules or uniforms, it was about seeing the heart of a person. One day, the city organized a special ceremony to honor all veterans. The mayor spoke about courage, sacrifice, and the importance of remembering those who fought for peace. John was invited to light a candle of remembrance. As he held the flame, many veterans and families stood around, feeling a deep connection. Michael stood nearby, watching with pride. The guard who once only watched the gate had become a leader in his community. After the ceremony, John and Michael sat together on a bench in the park. The air was cool and the leaves rustled gently. John spoke softly. "Michael, you have changed. Not only my life, but many others. You showed me that even a small act of kindness can make a big difference." Michael smiled. "You taught me the meaning of courage and friendship. I hope we can continue this work for the veterans who come after us." John nodded. "Yes, it is important. We must keep telling our stories so no one is ever forgotten again." Their friendship had become a symbol of hope, a bridge between the past and the future. Sometimes, John thought about the years he had lived through, the battles, the losses, and the hard days after the war. But now, he felt peace. He knew that his story had helped others, and that made his journey worthwhile. Michael looked at John and said, "I hope that every veteran finds someone to listen, to care, just like you found me." John smiled warmly. "And I hope every young person learns that respect is the strongest kind of courage." The city continued to grow in kindness. Schools taught children about veterans. Communities held regular events to honor those who served. And people remembered that behind every uniform was a human being with dreams, struggles, and a heart full of hope. John and Michael's story stayed with everyone who heard it. It reminded them that respect and understanding could heal wounds and bring people together. In the end, it was not just about one veteran or one guard. It was about all of us learning to see each other, listen, and care. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.